Good morning, and welcome to Comics for Breakfast. I'm your host, Jason Mink. If you're new to the channel, I'd like to say, hola! Welcome! It's fantastic that you're able to join us on this adventure. We've had over 100 subscribers in the past week, and I'm very excited to be able to provide you guys with all the old comics-based content that you're hoping to see. We're going to do our usual Comics for Breakfast thing, but before we begin, I just want to address a few things that are happening in the world right now. It's an old Chinese proverb that says, "May you live in interesting times." And these are certainly interesting times. As you can see, there are a few changes to our set here. These are to focus on the occurrences that are going on in the world around us right now. You know, we're doing our best to cope with these issues as they come up that impact our hobby very specifically. A question that I've been asked a number of times is, Mink, as far as it goes with all these talk of viri and creeping fungi and all the diseases and creepy crawlies that are trying to get to me, they say that they can live on surfaces. They say they can live on money. They say they can live on my old comics, Mink. Is that true? The answer, I'm afraid, is yes. Your comics are crawling with just about everything, from typhoid to dropsy, scurvy, dum-dum fever. Trust me, they're covered in it. So what we're doing right now is we're actually offering a service. We're going to dispose of those old comics for you. There's no sense in putting yourself at risk any longer. Just send them to this convenient address at the list below. We'll take those books and we'll deal with them for you. You never have to worry about that. Move on with your life. We're actually going to move on with the show. Let's get right to it. It's breakfast time.
Breakfast!
Let's begin your Sunday with a little sorcery. Chilling adventures in sorcery from Red Circle Comics. Red Circle Comics were an imprint of Archie Comics, a place for the publisher to feature its non-humor content in the 1970s and early 80s. The company produced little of note from a sales perspective, but was responsible for some truly classic dollar box books like the Super Cops and these fantastic sorcery comics. Our first story, Cat, focuses on Alden Brooks, a down-on-his-luck cat burglar looking to make one final score. He works his way through the Caribbean until encountering Consuelo, a seemingly bored socialite whose beauty and easily removed jewelry catches his eye. Consuelo is the daughter of Count Atalan, a rich eccentric and sorcerer. Hey, it's right there in the comics title, folks. Connie hires Cat, as the story so belligerently insists upon calling him, to break into her father's chambers and steal the talisman from around his neck, a task easily accomplished by our sticky-fingered protagonist. But surprise! His arrival has been anticipated by the Count, who apparently thrives on these sort of Inspector Clouseau-esque shenanigans. Just then Consuela shows up. Without the talisman, the Count is susceptible to his daughter's magic, and the two shapeshift for their final battle into a cobra and a mongoose. Not lions or rhinos or whales. I guess they lack the metaphorical significance the creator was striving for. Defeating her father, Consuelo turns her attention to Mr. Brooks, who she transforms into a little kitty. See, folks? There is a fun side to black magic. Our second tale concerns a scientist seeking to find the missing link in humankind's evolution. Dr. Burris whips up a groovy little time pod and catapults himself back to the Paleolithic era. All seems copacetic at first, but it's not long before Burris runs into a group of Cro-Magnon to piss off. But have no fear. In spite of their unchecked savagery, primitive man is defenseless against the power of judo. The tribe quickly takes a shine to Beardy McGee here, and he happily settles into his studies. Then, catastrophe, in the form of a herd of woolly freaking mammoth that total his time machine. Now permanently stranded in the past, the doc eventually takes up with Lo-El, a hair-lipped but otherwise fit specimen, and ends up producing the very missing link he came to the past seeking to find. In The Immortality Factor, Marion Miller is committed to an asylum due to her delusions of being preyed upon by a vampire. There she inexplicably dies of a heart attack in spite of her young age and good health. Arden Miller disputes the cause of his sister's death, but the mustachioed Dr. Moulton says otherwise. A note left on Arden's windshield leads him to investigate the Sunnyside Sanitarium, where Marion's body currently rests, but his lack of sneaking skills leads to his incarceration. Dr. Moulton, now unapologetically Boris Karloff, engages in the typical mad scientist shtick until Arden turns the doctor's scalpel back upon him. And you know how they mentioned vampires at the beginning? Yeah, it's vampires, leading to a fairly grisly death scene from the company that gave you Archie every month. All of the stories and art in this book are credited to Gray Morrow, who did a lot of heavy lifting over at Red Circle in the 1970s. It's cool to see the creator get the opportunity to explore different genres and just generally get paid to do his thing. That sort of window wouldn't be open for long, but while it was, Red Circle produced some truly interesting comics. Next up, are you ready to meet Miss Pepper? What do you mean, no? Meet Miss Pepper was loosely inspired by the 1950s television show Our Miss Brooks. Produced by St. John Comics, the book was penciled by Joe Kubert and inked by Bob Bean. This is number 5, not because I missed the first 4, but because they were actually a different comic entirely called Lucy, the Real Gone Gal, a book that was far closer in tone to those early Archies as far as being a racy teen kind of book. In our introductory tale, we join Miss Pepper already in progress, trying to get her ass in gear. You see, it's her first day on the job, and she's already late. Not an inspiring start for an authority figure. Car troubles lead her to a meet-cute with Mr. Fizz, the new gym coach. Fizz comes on strong, but makes precious little impact. Ditto for hornball sociopath Maximilian, who immediately fixates on his new teacher. He makes about as much headway as Fizz. This Miss Pepper is a tough customer, and she shows it by giving her new class the horns right out of the gate. Instead of being given some humanizing rationale for being hard on her students, like teaching them a lesson about preparedness or duck and cover, this is simply glossed over. Miss Pepper goes home. She catches a ride with some students Ginny and Jigger in their hot rod, grades some papers, and goes to bed. In the final panel, we're told this is our new favorite teacher. But why? She just busted our chops 2 pages ago. I mean, look, I get why Mr. Fizz likes her, but the kids? I'm going to need further convincing. Our second story is about some tow-headed deviant putting tax on his fellow students' chairs. Now, I'm confident that the comics creators didn't invent this concept, but they certainly introduced it to at least a handful of children who otherwise would have never even considered doing this sort of thing. Get Fred Wortham on the phone. I may owe him an apology. Next up, we have activity pages hosted by Chicks and Chucks. What happened to Jigger and Ginny? They have something better to do?
At any rate, Chicks teaches us how to have a sloppy Joe party, while Chucks teaches the boys how to play football some more. Why getting a ball from one end of the field to the other needs to be this complicated is beyond me, but hey, I was never a big sports ball guy, what do I know? That said, it preps us adequately for the football-based hijinks ahead. Miss Pepper needs boys for her Greek play, a hard sell even back in the seemingly innocent 1950s. She heads to Mr. Fizz's gym class with the hopes of roping some football players into participating, but unsurprisingly, they want no part of it. Seeing his chance to spend some time with his crush, Maximilian volunteers, looking all the world like MODOK by the time he's dressed. The play ends up on hold when all the girls rush off to watch the boys lose at football, but some quick thinking and a bit of dirty cheatery on the part of Max leads to a 1-point win. The next story is Max-centric too, as if the creators suddenly realized halfway through the book that Miss Pepper was about as exciting as waiting for a haircut. Our boy Max invents an inexpensive but potentially explosive paint substitute. Miss Pepper, aware of its potential volatility, recommends it be used to paint the school anyway, which goes about as well as you'd expect. When this goes awry, she actually has the gall to scowl at Max. Unbelievable. It's only an act of fate that saves the situation. Miss Pepper doesn't solve the problem through hard work or smarts. She just kind of stands back and winces as the situation resolves itself.
It's weird. I read this comic before, but it never really struck me how much of a non-entity Miss Pepper was. One gets the sense that an editor walked past Joe's desk one day when he was sketching, looked down, pointed to a few drawings, and said, "Give me 4 stories by the end of the week." There's just precious little to get invested in here from a character standpoint. Miss Pepper is petty, quick to anger, and lacks any visible sense of humor or passion. In fact, she doesn't even have a good answer as to why she wants to be a teacher.
We're just supposed to like her because her name is there on the cover and she's pretty in a where'd her nose go sort of way. But the whole thing is just a slog, redeemed only by the Joe Kubert art.
Lastly, but not leastly, we crack open a copy of Marvel Team-Up number 59 from July of 1977. Now, this book was written by Chris Claremont and illustrated by John Byrne and features a powerful cover by Dave Cockrum, Mike Esposito, and Danny Crespi. Byrne and Claremont may be best known for their mutual collaborations on the Uncanny X-Men comic of the early 1980s, but this book shows that they can do more than just mutants.
Making his way home from a previous adventure, Spidey is assaulted, first by fire and then by ice. Meanwhile, the Pims are getting their Friday on when flashing lights on the riverfront catch their attention. Hank, already dressed in his yellow jacket gear, zips out and catches an unconscious Spidey as he drops towards the unforgiving waters of the East River and brings him back to the Pims' apartment. After an invigorating cup of hot cocoa, old Webhead remembers being ambushed by someone with powers that mimic both Iceman and the Human Torch. Before our trio of heroes can dwell on it further, the wall explodes. This is Equinox, a self-styled master of menace in the classic misunderstood misanthrope mold. A no-holds-barred battle ensues, with the Pims joining the fray. Using his powerful biodisruptive stings, Hank drives Equinox from the apartment, and the heroes pursue the fleeing villain across the Queensboro Bridge, where the tide turns.
With the heroes outmatched in power and savagery, Equinox gloats, moments away from victory. And then his mom shows up. How embarrassing!
Turns out Mom is a scientist and has been trying to cure the freakish condition that plagues her son. She's brought along a helpful ray gun, but needs to get close enough to use it. Before she can, Equinox lashes out, injuring both her and the Wasp. Enraged at his wife being hurt, Hank attacks Equinox, going toe to flaming toe with the dangerous menace. There's something to be said for your hero being on the ropes, seemingly beaten, but just on the edge of the possibility of redemption. That's Hank Pym in a nutshell, folks. We love the guy because he has everything we think we'd need to make it, but he still drops the ball, the classic no-hoper writ large across the Marvel canvas. Sadly, Hank's moxie isn't enough to win the day, and our hero is ground zero when Equinox ignites and explodes a gas tanker. Spidey and the Wasp arrive just in time to see Hank murdered, with the promise that they will be next.
Now I know right now some of you are saying, wait a minute, Mink. Hank Pym didn't die at the end of this issue. Well, I'm telling you that he did. Yes, it's shocking, folks, but it's for the best. Better for Pym to go out as the hero that we always knew that he was, as opposed to overstaying his welcome and sticking around long enough to be mishandled, mistreated, and ruined by a series of increasingly desperate writers who seem less concerned about telling a solid story and more about currying favor with their peers and breaking all of the toys in the corporate toy box. Yep, that's it. That's how it happened, all right. I'm Jason Mink. If you enjoyed this breakfast, please consider supporting us at the link below. Daddy needs a new pair of everything.